I hope you guys are happy that intro music is only back because you asked for it. It is college football week 5. I am Kelly Stewart at Kelly in Vegas on Twitter, and this is Wager Talks. Bet on it. Marco D'Angelo at Marco in Vegas. Joe Raineri at Joe Raineri, both on Twitter. And I lost a bet to Marco today when we were getting ready for the show. I didn't see a jacket on Mr. Raineri, and Marco said, "Are you kidding me? That is the best bet of the week." And unfortunately, I started out with another L, just like last Saturday, off an atrocious week. But didn't have an atrocious week? Marco D'Angelo. He's been crushing it here on the show. So I'm going to give him the nod first in this, primetime slate, if you will. We're going to break down a couple of games that we thought might tickle your fancy. Saturday, ESPN, 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific. The LSU Tigers just 2-point favorites at Ole Miss. Total 67. Marco, you have the floor.
Well, we're going to look at this one, and I am going to look to the primetime home dog. It's a small home dog. My only concern that I'll point out, I'll give the con right away, and that is I generally don't like to go against a favorite that had a big scare last time out, and that is what happened with LSU. As we predicted, a lot of us liked Arkansas in that game last week against LSU. They made a game of it, 34-31 as a 17.5-point dog. So you're going to get a focused effort from LSU. But at this Mississippi team, and yeah, they're coming off the Alabama loss. So you could say, hey, is this a flat spot? They battled Alabama. They really didn't battle them. Alabama had control of that game, 24-10. They held them in check. They only rushed for 56 yards, in that game last week, did Mississippi. And if they do that this week, they're in trouble. But I don't see that happening. LSU does not have the defense that Alabama does. And speaking of defense, you know what? Mississippi is ranked 23rd in the country at stopping the run, 2.9 yards per play, while LSU checks in at 95th at 4.4. And I think that's key because as long as Mississippi can move the ball, keep it balanced with the rushing game and the passing game, I think they stay in this game, and I think they pull it out. I'm going to go ahead and take this one. The one knock I will say, they had a physical game with Alabama last week, did Mississippi. They are going to have another physical game with LSU this week, but playing at home, looking to bounce back. It's their first loss of the season. Nobody thought they were going to run the table, so all of their season goals are still in place. We'll go ahead, take Ole Miss plus the 2. I'm calling it 31-27, Ole Miss.
Joe Raineri, welcome to the show. Thank you for handing me my first loss of the day, and good thing it's baseball season on Wednesday still, so I actually can't get another one. We're going to try to change that around this week, and it starts with some of these underdogs. Do you think that Ole Miss can pull the whole upset here, or are they gassed, like Marco D'Angelo said, from coming off that Alabama game? I don't know what to make of this one. Total seems really high, 67, but it did not make the Are You High segment.
No, it didn't, but I'm still going to look at the total in this one, and I think Marco nailed it. The issue here for Ole Miss is they better figure out how to run the ball because they haven't at all this year, and they certainly weren't going to run the ball on Alabama, and I think they kind of knew that. You can't have Jackson Dart dropping back 50 times and expect good things to happen. But I do think they're going to have some success against an LSU defense, and that's really what separates these two teams is defense. Ole Miss quietly has a much better defense than what LSU has here, and they are going to need to run the ball as best as they can, and I think they will. I think it'll set up some shots down the field. We just saw Arkansas not have a ton of success early in the game against LSU, but boy, oh boy, did they have a ton of success in that second half with KJ Jefferson. I think that's kind of the same blueprint here. I think the number is inflated for the full game. I think it's even more inflated in the first half. We're looking at 34.5 points for the first half. If Ole Miss is going to have a shot in this one for the full game, they're going to need to be able to run the ball. They're going to need to hold on to the ball here and try to limit what that LSU offense can do. We've seen both of these teams play slow starts so far this year in their first few games. I think it happens here again. I think the fireworks are going to happen in the second half, but I am taking the under 34.5 in this first half. I expect Ole Miss to pound the rock a lot against this LSU defense.
All right, let's pivot to a later game, Saturday, NBC, 7:30 Eastern, 4:30 Pacific. Notre Dame on the road at Duke as a 5.5-point favorite. Joe, total 52.5. I'm not going to lie. Duke just seems right in my wheelhouse, Joe. I want to take the points here with that Duke defense. This team has a lot to prove. But let me tell you how much money I've made against betting against Notre Dame this year. That would be precisely -2 units. I don't know if I can really do it again. What say you?
Well, I think it's important to point out that, take the idea that it's going to be a letdown spot for Notre Dame. It's, if anything, it would be a letdown spot for Duke, who seems to be rolling over everybody here. But I don't see how this game is going to be any different than really what we just saw with Ohio State and Notre Dame. We said last week on the show, expect defense to win out in that game and for it to be a struggle for both offenses. And that is what we've got here. Quietly, you've got a Duke secondary that ranks top 3 in just about every statistical category defensively. They have 3 studs in the back. Teams are not able to pass on this Duke team. Just ask Clemson how well that worked out, Cade Klubnik. This is a team that doesn't give up a ton of points, has not given up a ton of points. When you look at their schedule and who Duke has actually faced here, and you go, okay, they limited UConn to 7, Northwest to 14, Lafayette to 7, Clemson to 7. This has got defensive struggle written all over it here. Duke is priding itself on being tougher and more physical than everybody else. I think this game is going to be an awful lot of fun, not nearly as high scoring as the 52.5, I think, indicates. So I am looking at the under here. I don't see any difference. Final possession kind of situation in this game here. Turnovers to a minimum, but some great defense coming from both sides.
Ooh, defense. Marco, not a lot of our viewers like defense. They love the explosive offenses. That is not what we saw last week in South Bend between these two. Ryan Day didn't need to kick the PAT, but he did anyway. Get the push for the late bettors. If you had the plus 3.5, you got the W. If you laid 3.5, well, that was not very much fun for you. How do you think Notre Dame responds coming off that home loss here and headed into Raleigh-Durham?
Kelly, quick note on that PAT. He had to kick the PAT because they put a second back on the clock. If it would have been zeros, they would have walked off the field, and everybody that bet Ohio State would have lost. Well, you kick it. Nothing could happen. They just he wouldn't have had the opportunity.
Nothing could happen. Nothing can get blocked and ran back for 2 points, and then the game be tied. I'm just saying, listen, I know there's always a lot of controversy when Vegas gets the number right, what people and coaches are supposed to do. But I do have to wonder, sometimes when you get your guts ripped out in that type of fashion, how do teams respond historically?
Well, that's the whole premise for me on this play. And Joe said that he didn't expect Notre Dame to be flat. How can you not be? You had that game won until the final play of the game, where, by the way, you played the last 2 plays of the game with 10 players, okay? How does that happen twice, let alone once, okay? 2 plays in a row. So I don't know how Notre Dame picks himself back up off the mat. And, loss. Did you see Ryan Day after the game? I mean, he was looking for Lou Holtz. He was going to light up Lou after the game for Lou Holtz. But I like this side with Duke. This is a team, they're 4-0, and everybody's going to say, who have they played? Well, you can only play who's on your schedule. And yeah, they had 3 cupcakes, and they took care of those 3 cupcakes. But they did play Clemson the first game of the season, and they took it to Clemson 28-7. That game was never close. Duke dominated it the whole time. And how impressive has Duke been? Well, College Game Day is going to be there on Saturday. This isn't basketball season for College Game Day to show up at Duke. So this is a big deal. You've got Notre Dame coming to town. Anytime you get the Irish on your schedule in a big game situation where Duke is 4-0 It's a big deal. And I'm going to take Duke in this one. Duke is what I always refer to as a 200 club member. This causes problems for teams defensively. When you're a 200 club member, as I say all the time, you run and throw for 200 yards or more, both passing and throwing. What do you take away? If you're Notre Dame, okay? If you try to stop the run, they can beat you on the pass. You try to take that passing game away, they're going to run it up the middle on you. And couple that with, as I said, I just don't know after a gut-wrenching loss how Notre Dame doesn't come out flat after that game. I'm taking Duke. Going to be a good game. More points than you saw last week, absolutely. 27-23. I'll go ahead and take Duke.
All right. On that note, we have addressed some of the big games of the weekend, and we're going to do a little pivot. Take some time to go see one of my favorite guys, his new home setup, because I yelled at him on the Slack channel about his audio. Ralph Michaels. Got some nerd charts coming up for you guys. Mr. Ralph Michaels. Ralph at Cal Sports LV, if you guys are not following him, his homepage for all of the nerd charts and TNA. wt.buzz/RM. Welcome in, Ralph. Let me know before we start what you have up at Wager Talk at the current moment.
Kelly, you know that everyone in the Bet On It family appreciates all-time viewers, but I'm going to reach out to first-time buyers at Wager Talk with this special. I have a top-rated 5% college football play this season, 60% in college football the last 3 years, and the 5% play is the top play. The Saturday package on the front of Wager Talk or on my homepage is $39. How about this? Hit that package, use coupon code RALPHNEW, RALPHNEW. You save $34 and get all of Saturday college football, including my 5%, for $5. Ralph New is the code.
Love it, love it, love it. Trying out all sorts of new stuff for our new customers. We appreciate you guys watching Bet On It. We want to reward you for it. Ralph, you got a nerd chart for me, and unfortunately, it's not that wow, but I asked for it. I wanted to know for my own personal handicapping reasons. We know I don't do a ton of totals, but I wanted you to pull some information up for me.
Well, Kelly, while we say it's not wow, it's nice to get plays and selections and trends and angles here. I think it's more important that we take the time to help our bettors become better bettors. And it may sound redundant, but it's this. You walk into a bar and ask 10 people, do more college football games go over or under the total? Well, I'm going to tell you this. Since 2018, 49% of the games have gone over. That means 51% have gone under. So this chart, and remember, the new PDFs on my homepage will list all the trends and angles, all of the charts for both NFL and college football. It's free and it's posted every Wednesday night. Here are the totals since 2019. The top chart in blue are non-conference games. The bottom chart in brown are conference games. The seasons on the left, the months to the right. And take a look. You basically see 49% is the average percent for every season and every month. And let's remember, take a look at the 2020 season. 50.4% over-under to the non-conference, 50.6% over-under on the conference games, and that was the COVID year. So if we took out the COVID year, these numbers will be pretty strong. So I'm not telling you to bet unders in college football, but make sure you know the information that's available, that over 51% of college football games in the last 5 years have gone under the total.
Very interesting there. I would have not guessed given these new higher-powered offenses. Ralph, you've got 5 quick-hitting trends and angles for us. Let her fly.
And again, Kelly, if you miss anything, these will all be on the PDF. The first is this. You're at home. You scored 10 points last game. You scored 10 points 2 games ago. You are excluding favorites of 18 or more. So if you're a huge favorite, this does not apply. If you're a dog or a favorite up to 17, it applies. And the total is 62 or less. This applies to Sam Houston this week. Teams in that role have only gone 54 and 92, 37% against the spread. So a weak offense, back-to-back 10 points or less, excluding favorites of 17. Sam Houston is a fade, as this ATS system is 37%. System number 2, Kelly. This is one I like. It makes total sense to me. Since 2016, if you lost as a home favorite, but you had the yardage edge, now you're on the road with the lines between the 15s. So I'm excluding huge favorites. I'm excluding huge dogs. Those teams, again, not a wow number, 57%, but again, it makes sense to me. That's more important. You lost as a home favorite. You lost probably because you had a turnover deficit. You're against a like opponent on the road. This applies to play on Middle Tennessee, South Alabama, Northern Illinois, and Coastal Carolina. Number 3, Kelly. How early is too early to say bubble burst? A team's goals are shot. Well, I don't know, but I'll tell you this. Teams with at least 3 wins that were ranked and off their first loss of the season against an opponent that was a favorite the last game, and now the line is a dog or a favorite up to 22. So again, I'm excluding huge favorites because that's an entirely different category. Those teams that were ranked had at least 3 wins and now lost their first game, so maybe the national championship hopes are out of touch, have only gone 31.6% against the spread since 2002. This says to fade Oregon State and fade Ole Miss. 2 more. Teams that are off a conference win and are now a conference home dog. Pretty simple. You won last week against a conference foe. You're now a conference home dog. Those teams have gone only 32.5% against the spread since 2018. This says to fade Northwestern and fade Arizona. And the last one, Kelly, if you have a big line and a small total, what do you think happens? Well, since 2015, when a team is a favorite of at least 14 points and the total is under 43, huge favorite, very small total, those favorites like Michigan and Wyoming have covered 62.1% of the time. And just FYI, 53.8% of those games went over the total. So 14 points or more as the favorite, total of under 43, 62.1% says play on Michigan, play on Wyoming.
You love to hear it. Mr. Ralph Michaels at Cal Sports LV. Again, that homepage to get your free PDF download, wt.buzz/RM. Ralph, thank you for always bringing the TNA here on Bet On It. We're going to let you go, bring back in Marco and Joe, and see which dogs are barking for college football week 5. All right, my college football parlay is going to need some barking dogs this week after last week's atrocities. Let's see if Joe and Marco have a pair of dogs that also might be on my radar. Marco D'Angelo, you are up first. Let's hear who's barking this week in college football.
Well, Kelly, my barking dog could have been my sandwich game, could have been my trap game, but you know what? I used it here for the barking dog. Why? Because it's a touchdown favorite. I didn't want to hear that I had a small one again this week, okay? I wanted a big one. So we've got a full touchdown barking dog for you. So take that, Joe Raineri. When you come up, we'll see what you got. But I'm taking Syracuse here and against Clemson, and this has everything in my situational handbook that you can possibly have. Let's start with, we've got Clemson off the big game. They played Florida State last week. Anytime a team loses a big game like that, you're always worried about the flat spot the next week. Do they have that hangover effect after losing? Well, let's make it even worse. How did they lose that game? Well, late score, get into overtime, lose it in overtime on a turnover. anytime you have a team as a favorite the following week off of an overtime loss, I like to look to fade them. I don't want to be laying points with somebody that just lost in gut-wrenching fashion. So that would line me up on Syracuse. But the real reason is, and this is something that only comes up, once a year for a team, and that is what I call the dream crusher theory. And you look at Clemson, and what the dream crusher theory is when you suffer the loss that ends your season goal. Well, what is the season goal every year for Clemson? If you're a player going to Clemson, you expect to be playing in the National Football Playoffs. Well, whenever you lose your second game of the season in week number 4, and one of them was to Duke earlier in the season, granted, Duke's 4-0, but they're not getting all that much love yet, you are not going to be playing in the national championship playoffs. And this is the first game after that. I am going against them. This is Syracuse's Super Bowl. And as we told you last week, when Army went to town to Syracuse, I looked for Syracuse to struggle, have a close game against Army because they'd be looking ahead to this one. Well, that's what happened last week, is Army led for most of that game and held on for the half-point cover. We're going to go ahead and take Syracuse this week. They win this one outright. We got the full sprinkle on the touchdown, but we're playing plus the points as well, Kelly. Take Syracuse. This is their Super Bowl game.
I would have to agree with you, Marco. They're on my long list, but man, they just can't seem to get that W against Clemson, right? Even last year in Death Valley, it was so close. They were leading at half. We'll see what Rocky Long's got up his sleeve defensively, see if they can put some pressure on Cade. Joe Raineri, Marco said his was bigger than yours this week. Is that true?
Well, don't forget it. It's really not the size that matters. It's the size of the ticket you're going to cash, actually, once it wins. Don't do you a whole lot of good if it don't stay up after all. And, hey, +7, nice, Marco, with Syracuse. But you also understand it's got to win, too. That's the whole point of this segment, which is why I'm taking South Florida on their trip to Navy and Annapolis here. Now, while it might be a little smaller at 3.5, I certainly like the chances of this being a winning outright ticket here because hence the barking dog here. I love South Florida this year, love the turnaround, and you guys have seen it here on what they have been able to do with this program. Brown, the quarterback of South Florida, the kid, I mean, if that wasn't a wake-up call of what he has been doing against that Alabama defense there a couple of weeks ago, it was a whole lot of fun to watch, and I don't think it's going to be any different against a Navy team who's got a little extra rest here for this one. But let's be realistic here. I mean, who are we kidding? How many points are we really going to get? I think that Memphis game was an anomaly. I do not see Navy being, this big, we're going to drop 30, 40 points on teams here. They played Memphis tough, but I think Memphis was taken by surprise. Love the new coaching staff. Love the new regime at South Florida. I thought what they did here these last couple of games is really take that next step, which is what you want to see. Do not trust the new regime there for Navy. Do not trust the triple option. I think they're going to be playing from behind most of the game, which is going to be very difficult to watch Navy come back and win this one. I think South Florida not only covers, but wins outright going away.
All right. The battle of the big ones is underway for week 5 in college football. Joe, we always love to fade Joe Public, but it has not worked out very well for those doing so this year. Give me a winner on who we're fading this week.
It seems there's a lot of people fading Texas Tech these days. Have you noticed that?
Unfortunately for my futures bet, yes.
Yes, I know. And listen, we saw it last week, right? We watched their quarterback with the annual injury there. I believe he broke his leg or fibula or something along those lines. The bottom line is it has forced people to run to the window and think that they are going to go ahead and back Houston now because this thing has dropped from 10 down to now we're seeing 8.5. And Tyler Shout is got to be the most talented quarterback who never plays any games because he's always hurt that we've ever seen. And ironically enough, the quarterback that's going to be representing Houston in this game, was the backup quarterback there at Texas Tech. Now he gets to come home And yeah, the big difference in this game to me is not about the quarterbacks. It's about the defenses and the ability to run. The weather is going to be atrocious, they're saying. Plenty of wind and rain all day. I think this is not going to be the kind of homecoming or get-even spot that Donovan Smith had hoped for. I do think tough loss against West Virginia there, in which, of course, Shao did get the leg broken there, but they did almost pull off the upset on the road. I like them at home, mostly because I know they're going to be able to run against this Houston defense who can't stop anybody. Couple that with the fact that Donovan Smith, the reason he's not at Texas Tech anymore is because they couldn't trust him. Big kid, athletic. He has no idea where the ball is going half the time. He's a turnover machine. This defense at Texas Tech is going to get a couple of picks and a couple of turnovers, which ultimately is going to allow them to win this game going away. Not buying Houston here, not buying them in this spot. We got a desperate Texas Tech team who just lost their quarterback, and we've heard Marco say, right, the troops rally around. I think Texas Tech rallies around at home and doesn't allow the big middle finger that Donovan Smith is hoping to give Texas Tech with Houston. So I am fading all the love for Houston here. I am backing Texas Tech to win by double digits.
I hope you're right, Joe. I could use that W to keep my futures bet alive, but also Houston. I've been on them twice this year. While they tried to make an epic comeback against Rice, TCU proved to be too much for them as well. So I agree with you there. This is a buy low spot on the Red Raiders. Marco, it's about lunchtime here on the East Coast, and I was going to order some Uber Eats, but Joe stopped talking, and so I had to come back on camera. So anyway, what's the sandwich game of the week?
Oh, well, Shelly, you might not like this sandwich, okay? It's not a tasty one. It's one of those ugly ones. But you know what? That's what the sandwich does, okay? You're going to find a team that doesn't look that attractive against a team that looks very attractive. Why are we doing that? Because we want to find a spot where one team is overvalued and they're in a situation where they are going to take the other team for granted. That is what we have here. And we're going to take a look at Oregon and Stanford. Okay, everybody in the world saw what happened last week. Oregon just absolutely blew the doors off of Colorado. It was about as satisfying of a win as you could possibly have for a team, because when you get to derail the hype train that is Colorado and Coach Prime, the players had a lot of enjoyment in doing so. And they played that game right until the last few minutes of the fourth quarter. Even though it was a 42-0 game, they wanted that shutout. They wanted the last slap in Coach Prime's face of shutting them out. So they fought right down to the wire till Colorado got that late touchdown in the fourth quarter that was meaningless. But what we're looking at here, now you're off such a satisfying win. Now you go on the road. You're playing a Stanford team that, let's be honest, they're 1-3. Their one win came the first week of the season against Hawaii. You're going to look right past this team. And why are you going to look past them? Well, who do you got on deck? You got Washington, who I feel is the best team in the Pac-12. You got Michael Penix Jr. up there at Washington, just lighting up the toe board. And you know Oregon is looking ahead to that showdown. I am going to go ahead and take Stanford in this one. I am going to get them plus a ton of points in this game. We're looking at 27 points. This is an inflated number based off of what you saw last week. And really, is Oregon going to bring that same intensity this week that they did last week against Oregon? Even the mascot got into the heroics of that game, throwing shade at Coach Prime when he came out with the clock necklace and the glasses and everything else. That was just too good. Too much fun. They yucked it up on the sidelines. They pay the price this week. Go ahead and take the dog plus 27. It is not a tasty sandwich, but it will fill you up as far as your cash in your pockets.
And on that note, I'm now not ordering Chick-fil-A for lunch because that reminds me of how gross their pimento sandwich is. Marco's got a pimento cheese sandwich for us on chicken that doesn't make any sense. And now I've lost my appetite. So Please do not kill the messenger. I was notified this morning that VR ace Yanni the Greek is on vacation this week, and so there will not be a gold segment. I hope he enjoys his time in the beautiful sunshine state of Florida. I did ask him if maybe he could just tweet out or do a selfie video. We will see if we can get one, maybe get a little extra gold later in the week. So on that note, we're going to bring back in Marco and Joe because it's time for Best Bets. San Diego State catching double digits here over Air Force is going to be my best bet for the college football edition of Bet On It. And I'm going to give you a little reason why. If you guys watched Wager Talk today last week, you knew I liked them on Friday night. Unfortunately, they could not get a late stop there to get a win. But we have seen them capable of getting stops. We know they can force punts. And right here, they've got to be able to take down Air Force. 9 of their last 10, they have actually won outright, except for last season in that ugly 13-3 loss. I don't expect that to be the same final score this year. I know last week I took the better defense plus the points, and I got smoked because they had no offense. But I will tell you this San Diego State offense is going to come to play here. They always have this game circled, and I would not be surprised to see an outright underdog upset from the Aztecs. Marco D'Angelo, who is your best bet for this week in college football?
Well, Kelly, I'm going to go to the Pac-12. We had a play earlier in the Pac-12. We're coming with another one, and we're going to take a look at USC in Colorado. Why not? It's still a hype train. It's still Coach Prime. At least for one more week, people will be interested. And last week, Colorado got drilled. We talked about it, 42-6. 42-6, and the total in that game was 70.5. Why would I think anything different's going to happen this week? And the total's actually higher. It's 73.5. Well, here's why. As I said, Oregon was a very physical team, and they manhandled Colorado. USC ain't manhandling anybody. They're a finesse team. Last week, they played Arizona State, who is absolutely anemic offensively, and they gave up points to Arizona State last week. 28 points, in fact. If Arizona State can score 28 points, Colorado is going to get their points in this game. Last week when it was 42-0 with Oregon, Oregon was taking their foot off the gas. They were trying to get to the finish line with a shutout, and they were playing hard-nosed defense to try to get that shutout. No prevent defenses. There's going to be points scored in this one, which means every time Colorado does score, USC is going to have to keep their foot on the gas, and they will score. In fact, they'll probably score easier than Oregon did because USC has more explosive plays. I like this one to soar over the total. I think you're going to see this one in the 80s. I think the 73.5 is a gift, and people that are going to look at last week's score and see 42-6 and a total of 73.5, they're going to want to bet the under. It's the wrong way. We're going over the total as the best bet. Been very good with these best bets so far this year. Let's keep it rolling on Saturday. Over, Rover. We're taking over 73.5.
Ooh, Marco. Yeah, we had that under on the show last week from Joe. Easy peasy when Colorado doesn't score. I can exactly see why Marco said, not so fast, my friend. You're looking at the over this week. Joe Raineri, we're just cruising right along, almost halfway through college football season. Best bets for me have not been very best, but they've been good for you. Who do you have this week?
Yeah, still trying to recover from last week's up 21 points with less than 5 minutes to play, only to watch them throw up all over themselves, Louisiana Lafayette, and not get the cover. But I digress, because this week, this game, in fact, was going to be my barking dog. I had checked. Marco didn't put it in there, so I thought I was safe until I woke up this morning, and it went from getting 2.5 to now laying 2. So if it ain't broke, don't fix it. This is either going to be the CLV trophy of a lifetime, or this is going to be spot on. I happen to think it's spot on, and that's with Cincinnati on the money line right now, taking on BYU. And I think there is no more overrated team right now than the love BYU is getting. In Cincinnati, Listen, they didn't finish drives last week against a damn good Oklahoma defense. But you know what? They were in Oklahoma's side of the field a lot in that game. Why? Well, they can also run the ball. BYU can't run the ball. In fact, BYU is getting absolutely torched on the ground here. I mean, they also, by the way, beat an Arkansas team, which is where I think some of this comes into play here, but they were outgained 419 to 281. In fact, this offense isn't very good at all. Now, I get it. They go home, there's altitude, but I'm not buying that with this Cincinnati team. Back-to-back losses here against Miami of Ohio and last week against OU. I think this is a spot in which Cincinnati comes to the table and proves that it wasn't just an anomaly that we were giving them this much credit. This is a good team. Emory Jones, the quarterback, is going to be able to get his on the ground. I am not buying BYU. I think they are overrated. The numbers bear it out. I don't think this is going to be that big of a home field advantage. As far as I'm concerned, Cincinnati should have been the favorite to begin with, and now that they are, I'll lay it on the money line, and I will back Cincinnati to be the winner here and upend BYU on Friday night.
Yeah, BYU, the team that kept Marco D'Angelo getting another best bet versus me. That field goal was very painful. I'm glad I didn't have to watch it live because I probably would have just veered my car off. Never mind what I would have done. I got to Miami and I saw the final score and I'm like, you are kidding me. So congrats to Marco D'Angelo. Stay hot. I'm just glad we're not against each other this week. We're going to recap it up here. So they're going to throw up that graphic for all of you cheaters that scroll to the end. You guys can be super happy and cash some tickets with us. Going to turn it around this week, you guys. It has been a rough one. 1-6 last week for your girl. Either way, we love you guys. Thank you guys for hanging out with us every single week here on the college football edition of Bet On It. I do apologize again that VR is on vacation. Don't take it out on me. Again, we hope you guys enjoyed tonight's show as much as we do doing it, as much as we did doing it. From Marco, Joe, Ralph, VR, and myself, good luck. And until next week, let's bet on it.